Open worlds are usually associated with just mass, but big world doesn't necessarily equal good world. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the best small open world games out there, part 1. Starting off at number 10, it's Dying Light. Now, the map of this zombie-based parkour game isn't really that big, but it's actually kind of a good thing because you don't get a car like in the expansion to get around, so you have to go everywhere on foot. The city of Haran, where the game takes place, is this playground for freerunning. It's so well designed. It is a game where it's just as fun to avoid zombies as it is to deal with them. The map's actually kind of split into two parts, the slums and the old town. Neither's huge, but they're really vertical, and you'll spend a lot of this game standing on roofs rather than the city streets. This is a game where you're on a time limit as well. It's relatively safe during the day, but during the night, it gets really, really dark. Not like video game darkness, but more. Also, during the night, you're forced to deal with volatiles, which are superpowered zombies that stalk around at night. Oh, and kill you in seconds. The map is really small compared to a lot of massive open world games out there, but being forced to get around it on foot makes you feel every step. At number 9 is the mall from Dead Rising 1, which is not totally open world, but it's cool and worth mentioning. It's a huge mall, but pretty small for being the entire area you play the game in. There's only 7 main areas plus the maintenance tunnels. Now, Dead Rising is a pretty unique game in that there's always a ticking clock. You've got 3 days to complete your investigation. Well, you've got to avoid zombies, rescue survivors, and deal with some ridiculous psychos to figure out what's really going on. All things considered, 3 days is not a long time span. Playing the game, you're going to have to really learn the ins and outs of the mall, like learn where the best weapons are, where to find healing items, etc. And plotting your route to avoid zombies and not waste too much time is a really big part of the game. You're obviously on that time limit, and it's tough to get everything done in one playthrough. Your progress carries over every time you start over, so there's incentive to play through the game multiple times. Fully understanding the mall can make the game much easier, though. And number 8 is Bully. It's set in the Bulworth Academy in the town called, obviously, Bulworth. And this game is pretty unusual for a Rockstar game just because of the smaller stakes. The protagonist is smaller, your objectives are smaller, like raiding the girls' dorm or protecting a bullied nerd, and the map is, well, suitably smaller. It doesn't really feel small because at most you've got a bike, and that's obviously not like driving around in a car on a map. And all the while you're going to school, so you're pretty much on a time limit just how much you can even go out and do things. Hell, it takes a while before you even get access to the town. A big chunk of the early game is just limited to the academy. Still, it's a great game that adds a ton of variety and detail to the GTA formula. Many of the students and townies are specific characters who have certain routines they do, and in general, the town feels a little bit more lived in than any of the previous Rockstar games. At number 7 is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's a vampire RPG, and it actually only takes place in a few small areas of Los Angeles, Santa Monica, downtown, Hollywood, and Chinatown. And each area is really only as big as a city block or two, but they're just jam-packed with details. This RPG is really dense. There's not a lot of downtime between missions, and it's better for it. Each map is dotting with things to do and people to talk to, and of course, opportunities to do vampire stuff like hypnotize people, sneak around some vaulted sewers, or of course, suck some blood. I mean, Bloodlines is a little bit on the short side, but rather than it feel kind of like a ripoff, it feels concise and it's fun, and it really just, it doesn't waste your time. It's worth every minute. At number 6 is Shadow of Mordor. This open-world Rocksteady Batman-like game sees you sneaking around 2 relatively small areas of Mordor, I mean, it's a Lord of the Rings game, on a quest of vengeance against some dudes who killed your family or something. I mean, the main plot isn't really that important in this game. It's really just the orcs that are the star of the show. Because of the relatively small map sizes, you're pretty much seeing orcs all the time. And because of how fast you can run, it makes it pretty easy to get from one end of the map to the other. You add in the Nemesis system and you're dealing with all kinds of randomly generated orcs, and that game will keep you busy for sure. Though, thankfully, the game isn't actually that long, which, given how many orcs you end up stabbing, does a good job of help keeping it from seeming repetitive. I mean, this game isn't like algorithmic or anything, but the systems in place are basically what attracted people to the game, and the people that love it for that reason. At number 5 is Mafia 2, which takes place in the city of Empire Bay. Now, Empire Bay is a pretty cool looking city, but it's not very big. This criminal open world game's map is relatively small in comparison to the gigantic ones you see in other, even gangster games, but it makes up for the size of it by being extremely detailed. Some of the environments are impressive even 10 years on. You play as Vito Scaletta, and the game is about your rise to becoming a made man. So basically Goodfellas, but in the 1950s. Well, all in the 1950s. The world of this game, hell, the game itself, is really all about all the period details. When you go into an apartment, it's really 1950s feeling. Driving around is very different from Grand Theft Auto because the cars are from the 1950s. And all of this stuff was really meticulously researched to make it look super authentic and add so much to the game. I mean, you kind of have to specifically pay attention to map size to notice that it's not that big. At number 4 is The Outer Worlds. Here's the 3-word pitch for the game: Fallout in space. And not like cheap Fallout in space, it's made by the original guys behind the original Fallout and Fallout New Vegas. And what this game does is trades a sprawling open map like in New Vegas for a series of smaller locations that are set on different planets. Other than that, it's Fallout. It's first-person RPG with a heavy emphasis on guns. You can talk your way out of situations, you can sneak, recruit party members, it's all that stuff. Outside of just being set on smaller maps than in Fallout, it's just in general a smaller, more focused game. If you feel like some of the newer Fallout games feel bloated or barren or just too damn big, Outer Worlds and everything that it has to say and do will definitely appeal to you, because it's not only more manageable, but it puts all of that extra effort that you might see put into the map into charm. In my opinion, The Outer Worlds has charm that even Fallout 4 doesn't really have. Not that Fallout 4 doesn't have any charm, it's just The Outer Worlds is... It's hard to resist. At number 3 is the Shenmue series, which is really known for its detailed environments, especially in the first and third games. Hong Kong in Shenmue 2 is actually gigantic compared to the small town of Yokosuka in Shenmue 1 and Bailu Village in Shenmue 3. But what's special about these games is how you can explore the environment. You can go into a lot of houses, you can open drawers, generally just rifle through people's stuff. There's also tons of stuff to do, like gamble and play arcade games, practice martial arts. And what's pretty wild about the first and third games is how almost every character has unique dialogue depending on what point in the story you're at. It's just a huge attention to detail that makes these small areas feel more alive, even if the games can get pretty goofy at times.
Oh, hello, yo.
At number 2 is the Yakuza series and Kamurocho. I mean, we can't really mention Shenmue and praise it in that way without doing the same for Yakuza. Yakuza is kind of the refinement of that formula to a point of perfection. But Kamurocho is its main hub of activity for pretty much every Yakuza game, and there's been a lot of them. What makes this location so unusual isn't just how detailed it is. I mean, it's relatively small, it only covers a few city blocks, but there's tons of stores, arcades, restaurants, and back alleys to check out. But that even though it's the same place in every single game, there's always something new to find. Seriously, if you've played this series for a long time, you start to learn this place like the back of your hand. I mean, if you just describe to somebody the fact that they use the same map in pretty much every single one of these games, they'd probably accuse them of being lazy, but it's easy to see why they do it. The place has just become so beloved with fans, but it's also easy to see the amount of detail and love they put into it every time. Basically, Yakuza games are open-world beat-em-ups where you wander around, beat up bad guys, play some Virtua Fighter, and race toy cars. It's a weird series with a lot of melodramatic stuff mixed up with some truly goofy side content as well. At this point, the Yakuza series is almost a genre of its own, and though the city is small, it's literally every single time fun to explore. And at number 1, it's Batman Arkham City. It's hard to imagine, but the entire play area of this game is not even close to a square mile. I mean, it is absolutely tiny compared to some of the more massive open world games out there, but it's just packed with stuff. I mean, do we need to go into a detailed explanation of this game? It's just a phenomenal Batman game. The open world is dense and detailed, it's fun to get around using Batman's gadgets, and you're always finding really cool stuff to do or Riddler trophies. This is one of those games where by the end of it, you just feel like the world is your domain, so to speak. And of course, the map that Rocksteady made for it is entirely wide. But what do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe and enable all notifications. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on Gameranx.